DMV Download, the new daily podcast from WTOP News, is out now. Hosts Megan Clorty and Luke Garrett get the story behind the story.
Every weekday afternoon, Megan and I will go beyond the headlines with WTOP reporters and sources to bring you more on the biggest local stories impacting you, our fellow Washingtonians.
The DMV Download podcast is available now on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. The DMV Download podcast is presented by Steamfitters Local 602.
Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Comedian Kevin Nealon cracks up the D.C. Comedy Loft tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday in Washington, D.C. We spoke when he played the Kennedy Center in 2017, breaking down his career from Saturday Night Live to Happy Gilmore.
We're here with the one and only Kevin Nealon. Hilarious guy. Coming May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us.
Gracias.
I'm trying to think the last time we saw you out at the Kennedy Center. I feel like you were doing you did the bull dance quote for me on the red carpet. Maybe it was Mark Twain for Eddie Murphy or something.
You are correct.
Okay.
You are correct, sir. It was the Mark Twain Award for Eddie Murphy.
Memories of that real quick before we dive into this, because I guess that was your last time at Kennedy Center.
It was. It was a fun night. You know, I don't know Eddie that well, but I did a movie with him called Daddy Daycare a while back. So I guess, and we've both been on Saturday Night Live at different times. So, and I guess they needed a couple of white guys on there, so I was part of the program. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun people on there, and to play in that room was just outstanding. It was a real thrill.
Awesome. Well, this time on May 5th will be all about you, not all about Eddie for a change. Now we got the Kevin Nealon show here. What sort of stuff are we going to see? Is it do you have like political humors because we're in D.C., or is there other current events going on, or what can we expect?
Well, that's a good question. My act has always been evolving. I equate comedians to blues musicians. They get, they live out their life and they draw from that, and it kind of gets a little more seasoned as they get older. So mine is basically it's kind of twisted kind of a approach on my life, and an exaggeration of what's going on, and it's hard to really describe what you do as a comedy you do as a stand-up. It's like somebody trying to describe themselves to somebody else. But I have friends that say your comedy kind of sneaks up on people. You know what I mean?
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's a little more dry or what, but and also club owners say that they have to order more red wine when I perform at their clubs. Some of them, like the blue collar comics, they have chicken wings they need to order more of. So mine, I guess, would be more of a sophisticated crowd, I'd like to think.
Why do you think it's a red wine and not white wine? That's interesting.
I don't know. Maybe he said white wine too, but because I prefer red wine, I'll just make it red wine.
Oh, okay. I got you. All right. Well, take us into sort of how, whenever we talk to comics, I'm always curious how you got into it. But you grew up in St. Louis area, right? How did you actually get
I was actually born in St. Louis. I only lived there for 3 weeks. I hated the place. I got in a car and I split. Now, my father actually graduated from SLU, St. Louis University, and then we moved to Connecticut. That's where he got a job. But, I got into, I was into music a lot. I wanted to be like, a performer of music and a singer-songwriter, but I was just too frightened to do that on stage. It was too intimidating. And telling jokes seemed to come more naturally to me, and I really enjoyed the art of stand-up, the craft. I'd watch these stand-ups come on TV, and I think, wow, man, this is cool. They don't have any tools or anything. They just come out and talk, and everybody loves them, and they make people laugh. And so I thought that was a pretty good career possibility. So I kind of pursued that.
Who were some of those guys that you grew up in that made you love it?
Oh man, there were so many different ones at different levels of my life. But there are people that go back. You may not have even heard of them, but like Stanley Meyer and Handelman. I loved Jerry Lewis movies growing up. I loved that slapstick stuff. Although I don't do that now. But and then before I came out to LA, right before it, years before that, it was more like Steve Martin and Albert Brooks and Andy Kaufman. I like that absurdity stuff, and they were so unique and original.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
When all right, so then how do you actually break into it yourself? What was your first gig?
Well, I went to New York City to check out the comedy scene because I lived in Connecticut and that was closer, but it was so intimidating. The clubs were so, the audiences were that New York brash audiences and the comics were tough. And I thought, I've never been to California. That seems more laid back. And so I moved out to Los Angeles and I just started hitting all the open mic nights and developing material and developing a style. Because when you first start out, you're emulating other comics. When you go to the clubs back then, they're emulating either David Letterman or Woody Allen or Richard Pryor or Steve Martin, whomever. And then you finally kind of, get enough stage time where you develop your own style.
Yeah, definitely. But didn't you also get an early break on Carson, right? Didn't you do a gig on that?
Yeah, that was my first big break. It was, at the time I was doing a late night talk show, and he was the king, and he was so great at it. And so I passed the audition, and finally, I got on there, and I sat down on the couch with him. We did panel, and it couldn't have gone better. And it was really, to this day, it's the highlight of my career, even more so than Weeds or Saturday Night Live or any of those things.
Interesting. Why do you say that? Just because he was such a god? You looked up to him so much?
Yeah, and also stand-up is what I wanted to do. It wasn't really to become an actor or be on those shows. I wanted to be a stand-up, and to get on the Tonight Show, that was the goal. That kind of validated you as a stand-up. And so, I after that, I've never had more of a natural high than waiting for it to come on air. And, to this day, it's kind of like my feather in my cap.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned some of your shows, including Saturday Night Live. That's how a lot of us got to know you, around the world. But take me into when you first hooked up with those guys. How did you actually make that connection? Was it through Dana Carvey, or did you bring Dana Carvey in?
Well, I knew Dana Carvey. We were friends from the stand-up circuit, and we were also renting a house together in the Hollywood Hills with a couple other comics. And he got selected to be on that show. It was really difficult to get even an audition for Saturday Night Live in Los Angeles or anywhere. You had to have a high-powered agent or whatever, or have a reputation about you. So, I wasn't even thinking about going on that show because I was a stand-up. I didn't do sketches or characters or impressions. And so Dana got on that summer for that coming fall, and he called me from Lorne Michaels' house that summer. He said, "Hey, Kev, I'm out of Lorne Michaels' house in Long Island. I'm in the back bedroom. Guess who's in the kitchen? Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd." I said, "Are you kidding?" He goes, "No." Anyway, I talked to Lauren, and they're looking for one more cast member. And I told him about you, and he might want to see your tapes. I said, Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray are in the kitchen? It didn't even register to me that I would even be part of that.
You buried the lead.
And, yeah, exactly. And so, I sent my tapes in, and, just to humor them. And a couple of weeks later, I got another call from Dana. He goes, "Kev, I'm back out at Lorne Michaels' house. I'm in the back bedroom. Guess who's in the kitchen? Steve Martin." I said, "You're kidding." He goes, "No. Anyway, Lorne liked your tapes. I think he's going to fly you in for an audition."
And you said Steve Martin's in the kitchen?
Steve Martin's in the kitchen, yeah. Steve Martin's in the kitchen. He goes, "Yeah, someone's coming. I got to go." But anyway, so, I flew in, knowing I would never get it. I thought it was just a free trip to New York, and I auditioned at 30 Rock. I did like some of my stand-up and some just loose characters Dana and I used to fool around doing in the driveway of the house we were renting. And I wasn't nervous at all because I knew I wouldn't get it. Everybody else was nervous, and I flew back, and 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in front of Lorne Michaels in a high-rise in Beverly Hills, and he's offering me a job on Saturday Night Live.
And you're saying Lorne Michaels is in the kitchen.
Awesome. Well, the next thing I knew, I was out at Lorne Michaels' house, and I'm in the kitchen, and Dana calls me. He goes, "Kev, I'm in the back bedroom. Guess who's in the kitchen?" I said, "I am, big tough guy. I'm in the kitchen now." But yeah, it was just like that. It just kind of goes to show you, you never know what's going to happen. Just show up and do your thing, and maybe you'll be right for something.
Thanks. I'm glad we could run that kitchen joke all the way to its completion.
I know, right?
That's great. Take me into that moment. You're talking of Dana Carvey. What's the moment where you were you're in, I guess, in the writer's room or whatever at SNL, and the idea of Hans and Franz comes into mind?
Well, the Hans and Franz came the second season because after our first season, we went on tour. Dennis Miller, Dana Carvey, and myself. We did an SNL tour that was sponsored by Swatch. And we did a bunch of cities and theaters, and we were in Des Moines, Iowa, staying at a Red Roof Inn, and I was watching Showtime. They did Up Close and Personal, and it was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it was just so hilarious, listening to him, the cadence of his accent and things. And I called Dana's room. I said, "Dana, you gotta come over and watch this Arnold Schwarzenegger interview with me. It's just hilarious." And we watched it, and for the rest of the tour, we're talking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let me tell you something. He was so so pompous and all that stuff. And we said we got to come up with some characters. And I used to live in Germany, so I kind of knew like the names Hans and Franz, and the Austrian accent and stuff. And And so, and bodybuilding was pretty big back then. And so we just thought it'd be funny if there were these two pathetic bodybuilders who never did anything. They never lifted a weight themselves and were just so full of, kind of bitterness, and they would berate everybody. And we just kind of wrote that together, and Lauren put it on, and people didn't know who we were the first time, so it was received kind of, warmly, but, not crazy. And then we let it sit for a couple of weeks, and I said to Dana, we should do Hans and Franz again, and so we wrote up another one, and when we came out, the place went crazy, so we knew there were hits.
Yeah, you pumped us up, man.
Yeah, believe me now, and listen to me later. Don't be the girly man. If you took your belt off, you cause a flabberlanche.
You still got it.
So self-important.
Stay tuned for the rest of our conversation, but first a message from a fellow WTOP podcast.
DMV Download, the new daily podcast from WTOP News, is out now. Hosts Megan Clorty and Luke Garrett get the story behind the story.
Every weekday afternoon, Megan and I will go beyond the headlines with WTOP reporters and sources to bring you more on the biggest local stories impacting you, our fellow Washingtonians.
The DMV Download podcast is available now on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. The DMV Download podcast is presented by Steamfitters Local 602.
Welcome back to Beyond the Fame as we continue my conversation with comedian Kevin Nealon.
A lot of your other SNL characters that I'll never forget, you had a lot of good misters, like you had Mr. Subliminal Message Man or Mr. No Depth Perception.
That's right. That's right.
Memories of those really quick, because I'm just like crying laughing thinking about them.
Well, the Subliminal, Mr. Subliminal or Subliminal Man, whatever it's called, that was the thing that came from my stand-up comedy. I was doing a thing called tagging, where I would split those little words in.
Yeah.
And then I got together with Al Franken, and we thought we knew about subliminal advertising. I went to school for marketing, so I knew about that, and we thought it'd be good to fit those words in to try to get something that you want from the other person. Next tickets, things like that. And that became a big hit too. And it's funny, you think you don't have any characters in you, or you can't do accents or impressions, but when you're put on the spot, you kind of rise to the occasion, and you realize that you can do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're Mr. Rise to the occasion. All right, well, before we move on to SNL, I just want to ask you really quick about Weekend Update. I mean, you were, I think, in my opinion, one of my favorite ones doing it. What was the coolest part of doing that, and how did you come up with that signature sign off? I'm Kevin Nealon, and that's news to me.
Well, the coolest part of it was a sit-down job, which was nice. And it was fun to be able to do topical material again and be able to just write jokes, because I went from writing jokes to writing characters and sketches and things like that. So here I was, thrusted back into joke writing, which is kind of cool. But I was also doing the other, I was doing sketches too. Dennis pretty much just did Weekend Update, so he could focus on that. So it was kind of a whirlwind, kind of a show for me, because I had to get all those jokes together from the writers that would write on the show. A lot of the writers didn't want to write Weekend Update because it wasn't a glorifying kind of a position for them. Nobody was talking about a joke on Monday. They're talking about characters that they saw. So, I actually was paying the first year or so. I was paying like writers in L.A. $50 a joke to fax me in like a joke, and then I would write some jokes, and a couple of the writers wrote. But and then eventually they hired a full-time writer for me. But it was. The tag, the sign-off, that's news to me. I didn't have that the first show I did, and I was trying to come up with something, and then I was laying in bed that next Saturday morning, and it just kind of came to me like at 5 in the morning, because I was going around in my head, and, that's news to me. So, and then Robert Smigel kind of incorporated the turning head in the beginning,
Yeah.
And we did a couple extra ones, like Halloween, my head would turn into a pumpkin. Or, my nose would start bleeding, as I came around.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so obviously through that show, you become close with Adam Sandler and transition into a lot of his movies. I mean, Happy Gilmore, we mentioned it at the top, but how often do you have people coming up saying, harness the good energy, block the bad, do the bull dance?
Yeah, quite often, especially when I'm golfing. Like I do a tournament in Lake Tahoe once a year. It's called the American Century Championship, and, you get a lot of fans out there, and there's a lot of athletes and, celebrities out there. So you get people kind of yelling that out. Feel the flow, do the bull dance, But yeah, I have done a lot of Sandler films, and they've always been fun. I'm, friends with him, and And whenever we do a film, it's kind of like a boys' club. You get the basketball hoop set up, and there's guitars around, and it's kind of it's like a summer camp.
Was the bull dance thing improv, or was that in the script?
I'm not sure about the bull dance. I think he might have had that, but a lot of my stuff was kind of improvised. Like feel the flow, harness the good, block the bad, send the ball home happy. Put a quarter in it, circular, goes around. Bags are packed,
Well, I
can't remember how much they edited out of that because we were just going on and on.
Well, I gotta say, because you mentioned, Bill Murray and all those guys earlier, as people you grew up on, and of course Caddyshack. But Happy Gilmore was my generation's Caddyshack. So you're like the Rodney Dangerfield in my mind. Are you kidding me? That's awesome, man. The two greatest golf comedies ever. I guess there's not that many, but all right. Well, moving forward in your career just a little bit, I know you did, Monk and a couple other things, but Weeds, Doug, memories of that real quick, and now you're on Showtime, so I guess you have a little more leeway.
Yeah, that was that kind of came into my hands. I always wondered if there would ever be a show like after SNL that would kind of make a mark, for me.
Right.
Because I had done a couple of sitcoms that didn't last, and I'd done other things, and then I saw this the script came to me. It said Weeds on the front. I thought, oh, it's another stoner kind of a project. These things have been done to death. And I read it and I thought, wow, this is really good. Good characters, good story. And I went and met with Jenji Cohen, who created the show, and she, we just hit it off, and I was perfect for the part of Doug Wilson. And and I was just a guest star in the pilot for that one. And then once it got picked up, they made me a regular.
Awesome. Well, you've had a great career. What are you working on? What are you working on next? We've seen you all over the place and a lot of stuff.
Well, I have a show on now called Man with a Plan. It's on CBS with Matt LeBlanc. It's on Monday nights at 8:30, and that's a fun show to do. We got good ratings, and we got the People's Choice Award for Best New Comedy this year, and we got picked up for a second season. We start taping August 7th, so I'm excited about that.
That's so awesome.
And then I've written a film also that I'd like to try to shoot this summer.
What's that one? Can we get a little teaser on that, or is it too early?
It's called The Pleaser. It's called The Pleaser, and it's a comedy. It's kind of a dark comedy about this couple who move in. My young wife, brings out her gay mother, who's a fertility specialist, and her partner to try to help us get pregnant.
Oh, nice. Oh, where are you in the phase of that? Is this pre-production stuff?
Well, we're just kind of like securing some investors right now and getting the pre-production stuff done.
All right, well, we'll get the word out for you in this interview, hopefully. I'm sure that'll mean a lot. But
yeah, if anybody wants to invest in that, call Brillstein Entertainment Partners.
Or come to the Kennedy Center on Cinco de Mayo. I guess in closing, why should we come out? If they hear this, why should our listeners come out?
That's a good question. I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't know why you'd want to come.
Well, there's many reasons they should come out. First of all, it's a great venue. And we need a lot of comedy right now, and I'm bringing the comedy. And I'm coming with Kirk Fox, who's a great comic, too. If you've ever seen him, man, he's so funny. He's going to be opening for me. He's a headliner himself, and we're buddies, so we just want to hang out. It's a little tour we're doing. So, yeah, and I'm kind of developing material for my next special, so it'll just be a fun night,
Awesome.
Oh, and I'm giving out money, too. I'm giving out a lot of money.
Oh, well, I like how you saved that for last. You should have said that at the top of the interview, man.
Well, I want the real fans to hang in there.
Oh, that's true. Well, all right, if they make it to the end of this interview, then they get the money.
That's right.
All right, cool. Kevin Nealon, you're the best. Thank you so much for taking the time. We look forward to seeing you out there.
My pleasure. Oh, I can't wait. I'm really excited about it.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.